Hi, all of you wonderful scuba divers out there. Welcome to the Scuba Diving Magazine podcast, where I break down the latest scuba diving news and things that have piqued my interest over the previous week. This week, it looks like DPV manufacturer ScubaJet have begun insolvency proceedings. Paddy has distributed $500,000 in their Project Aware campaign. The Dorset Coast Guard have called off the search for a missing scuba diver, and the Pearl Fleet have commented on the viral video of a shark dive that didn't go so well. So the first news story comes from Tauscher.net, and they say Austrian scooter producer is millions in debt. So insolvency proceedings for the company ScubaJet were opened at the regional court in Klagenfurt, I'm going to say, on Wednesday, the 22nd of May, 2024. The company produces and sells motors and drive systems, including scuba diving DPVs for water sports. According to information, the debts amount to 4.2 million euros. The over-indebtedness is estimated at 2.6 million euros by the credit protection organisation KSV 1870. 12 employees are affected by the insolvency. ScubaJet's fast underwater propulsion systems, you've probably seen them advertised online. They make really small and compact DPVs, and I've spent quite a lot of time looking at them because they seem a very smart travel accessible DPV. So if you struggle with like your strength in your legs, or you just you want to explore a little bit further, wider areas without burning through gas because you're just pumping those legs, and then you get this small compact little DPV that might not be like the fastest or have the longest burn time, but it helps. And it was even used in a Hollywood production. It was used in Avatar. And as a startup, the company became well known through Austrian TV show 2 Minuten 2 Millionen. But unfortunately, according to the Credit Protection Association, that KSV 1870, a reorganization plan is to be introduced as part of the insolvency proceedings, and the company's debt is to be reduced with the help of an investor. The application cites the development of the ScubaJet performance product range as the cause for the insolvency, for which considerable investments were made by the shareholders, but whose market breakthrough has not yet been achieved. The coronavirus as well, and the lack of availability of components also had a negative impact on the company's economic success, apparently. So yeah, it's just, again, trying to get hold of certain parts and like create the enough DPVs for the demand is just affecting everything, and yeah, they're going insolvent. But hopefully they can find an investor to just get them back on the straight and narrow. So yeah, we'll be keeping an eye on ScubaJet. Over here in the UK, searches by Coast Guard and RNLI teams for a scuba diver who went missing off the Dorset coast were called off on Sunday, the 26th of May. The joint operation had been launched shortly before 3 o'clock in the afternoon the previous day, following reports that a diver had failed to return from a dive. The Coast Guard coordinated a search that involved 2 of its helicopters and a fixed-wing aircraft, as well as RNLI Weymouths and Swanage all-weather lifeboats. All vessels in the vicinity were alerted to keep a lookout for the missing person. The searches had been stood down by midnight, with broadcast to shipping in the vicinity continuing throughout the night and resumed on Sunday before being called off later in the day. So very sad news. I've actually been in the area of a similar case where a diver had gone missing. It's so we surfaced after a dive, and one of the guys that I was diving with, he'd forgotten to take his motion sickness medicine, and I think there'd been a rather long period on the surface where we were just kind of bobbing around waiting for the boat to pick us up, and he was just broken by the time he got back on the deck, and literally I think he was just laying down on the deck, just suffering. And then a call comes round on the radio that there's a missing diver. No one from our group, it was just another group of divers. Someone had gone missing, and all vessels in the area had to wait. So we had to circle the area, just looking for a missing diver. The missing diver was later found. From what I understand, he or she, I don't know. They were found holding onto a locator buoy. And yeah, they were rescued, recovered perfectly fine, and yeah, my friend got back to dry land and his motion sickness medication. But yeah, unfortunately, it seems that this one this weekend didn't have the same positive outcome. On some nicer new, the Paddy Aware Foundation says that it is distributing more than $500,000 this year for its 2024 Mission Hub Community Grant Program. From sea turtle conservation through coral restoration to seagrass planting, the charity has selected 5 initiatives, bringing to 45 the total since the program started 3 years ago. The Paddy Aware Global Director Dana Moore said this, quoting, "These Paddy dive centres and NGOs are driving meaningful local action from the heart and often with little or no funding support, and these grants allow them to be true superheroes for our shared blue planet." So Paddy Aware launched the programme back in 2022 to help drive Paddy's blueprint for ocean action, and the grants are awarded in 5 categories. You've got one for coral restoration, one for developing marine protected areas, one for eliminating marine debris, one for reducing the effects of climate change, and one for marine species protection. Sea Communities is one of them, and they were founded in Bali in Indonesia in 2012 to continue coral restoration work with the local fishing community, employing citizen scientists. They have expanded into coral nurseries, microfragmentation trials, and mass plantings by volunteer divers and local fishermen. The Renzori Scuba Divers and Salvage addresses the problems of waste management, especially plastics, in East Africa, with 90% of rivers in Uganda draining into Lake Victoria, the main source of fish transport and water for 20 million people. It's also recognised to be the most polluted body of water in the region, and this grant aims to help them to establish the LVRPA initiative, which is the Lake Victoria Renzori Scuba Divers and Paddy Aware Conservation Program, in a bid to improvise sanitation issues throughout citizen science, community engagement and training, conservation partnerships, youth initiatives, and dive against debris cleanup and surveys. The third one is Mike's, I'm going to say Dwayne Beach Resort. Apologies if I mispronounce that. It's a 5-star Paddy diver sport in the Philippines. It's committed to protecting the fragile marine ecosystems of its local waters, including 13 kilometers of coastline with extensive seagrass beds where green turtles like to forage. And in Thailand, the Big Bubble Dive Resort is operated by the community of Koh Tao and has been committed to restoring coral reefs in 2017, working with the Department of Marine and Coastal Resources to plant more than 100,000 coral fragments around the island, and Paddy Aware helped it to expand its project in 2022. So lots of grant money getting sent to the right places, which is always nice to see. Moving to a different training agency, the training agency RAID has launched a new OTS full face mask program if you're interested. So following on from the agency's early unit-specific full face mask program, this new offering teaches everything a diver or an instructor, if you want to become a qualified RAID instructor, needs to know to safely use the OTS Guardian and the Spectrum full face masks. You've probably seen them a lot of like public service and public safety divers use them. They're quite recognizable, the OTS full face masks, and yeah, it teaches you all about the equipment, how it's set up, any inspections, donning and doffing, any adjustments, emergency procedures, because you can't just swap to your alternate, post-dive care, maintenance, communication, specific to those masks, everything. If you're interested in OTS and you want to get trained up, then yeah, you can sign up for a RAID course. I love full face masks. I've used plenty throughout my career across very different brands, and yeah, OTS are very well trusted. Yeah, you see them all over the place, so yeah, it is definitely worth considering. And if you're interested, then yeah, find your local raid dive center. And finally, this news story follows up with a news story that I spoke about last week, but now there's even more information coming out. So Singapore-based Pearl Fleet has hit back at criticism of its shark diving practices voiced by an environmental conservation group following the circulation of a video that shows a dive that took place from its White Pearl liveaboard in the Maldives. The operator has, however, conceded that it is now in the process of hiring an experienced dive manager to, quote, ensure safer diving practices. So that's a little worrying that they didn't have one already, but hey. And that feeding sharks during dives will be banned on the vessel at the center of the row. So if you've not seen it, it's basically a clip that's been going around social media. I've seen quite a few divers reacting to it, and it's basically a group of divers and a very loose group of divers. In the water column, lots of fish around, but there's at least one very inquisitive tiger shark that keeps coming up because what appears to be the dive guide has the head of a fish, and he's kind of holding onto it. So the tiger shark is interested, keeps snooping around, but unfortunately it's very inquisitive with the guests as well, who don't really seem to know what to do, and you can see it biting one of their cylinders or just having like a little tester nibble. It approaches another diver, and he's doing his best to like keep his arms like tucked in, so it's not going to bite onto anything, but it keeps like nuzzling him, and he has to like push it away very tentatively. And the Deep Sea Guardians, which is based in Switzerland, had shared footage of this dive taken by a Taiwanese instructor, explaining that it showed guests from White Pearl with a dive guide holding a marlin head interacting with a tiger shark in mid-water. In added commentary, DSG director Zimi refers to a, quote, highly inexperienced diving operator running the shark dive, and also suggests that it appeared to have resulted in at least one shark bite sustained by a female diver, an observation Pearl Fleet has denied. In one snapshot, you can kind of see where it appears that a tiger shark, or the tiger shark, is it's right in the face of one of the diver, and she has like both of her arms like out in front of her, like crossed, and it kind of looks as if it may have bitten her, but it's hard to tell from this angle because it's like overhead. Deep Sea Guardians said that it wanted to share the video with divers to illustrate that certain operators, quote, are the ones responsible when deadly accidents happen, and at the end of the day, sharks are always the ones paying the price. Luckily, this tiger shark was extremely tolerant, but in such conditions, a diver could have easily been killed by a shark, and it would have been in absolutely no way the shark's fault. The problem here is not shark diving, shark feeding, or anything. The problem is the fact that people like that run dives with zero experience and zero knowledge. Still quoting, because it only takes one ignorant operator like this one to ruin the work of thousands of well-experienced operators and conservationists like us that have been fighting for years to change this misconception we have about sharks. They're not monsters, but they aren't puppies neither. They are apex predators, and they must be respected for that. The video footage that was shared was edited and may have been misleading. DiverNet spoke to Jennifer Quinn, who's Pearl Fleet's marketing director, and she said the video footage that was shared was edited and may have been misleading. The dive guide was always focused on the safety of our passengers. That's why no one got hurt. She said that during the pre-dive briefing, the dive team had explained in details to the divers how to behave when encountering sharks, and you can kind of see parts of that. You can see that when it did approach one of the male divers, he kept his arms kind of crossed in front of his chest, so not to like throw your hands out, so that it gives the shark something to target on. Jennifer went on to say, during the dive, a tiger shark was spotted, and it seemed to be playing around with our divers. Fortunately, the shark showed no signs of aggression and no one was harmed. We checked all the divers first after the dive, and no one was hurt, and our divers were able to enjoy the rest of their journey happily. However, She went on to say that in response to criticism of the dive, the company had, quote, conducted a thorough debriefing session to educate our divers on how to handle encounters with tiger sharks, and plans both to hire an experienced dive manager and ban shark feeding during dives. The Maldives Tourism Ministry had declared shark feeding illegal under Clause 1, Section 13 of the Recreational Diving Regulation Act in early 2021 in response to an increased number of incidents. It's that kind of the operator wants to give their clients the best experience possible, so they sometimes chum the water to attract the sharks, because then the divers have an amazing time, and then they go back home and they say how much of an amazing time they had, and then they come back, they recommend it to others. But, of course, this isn't good for the sharks because it trains them to come around scuba divers expecting food, and you're just going to have a negative consequence after that. So, as ever, with all of these like viral diving media moments, the operator and the people have all been identified. The internet is a very big and very small place, so you can identify someone very easily through social media. And yet now we have an outcome and a statement, and a promise to do better for next time. As far as new dive equipment, the only thing that I can see is that the Fourth Element shoreline poncho has been officially announced. I'd seen it on a retail website last week, but there was nothing on Fourth Element's website. It is now, and yeah, it's a poncho. It's a waterproof poncho, and from what I can tell, it doesn't have like any like thermal lining like you get on the Storm or the Tidal, I think is the big fluffy one. So yeah, if you need a waterproof or a water resistant poncho just to throw on between dives, then yeah, you've got the Shoreline poncho now. That was about it as far as equipment other than Scuba Jet. So let's jump into some Ask Mark questions. The first one comes from M33N049. Whatever that means. And they say, about twin back-mounted, do I need 2 transmitters or is one enough? I know it's easy with side mount, 1 transmitter for each cylinder. I can't find any answer on the web, hoping you might help me. So yeah, do you put a transmitter on each first stage on back-mounted twins? No. I mean, it's the same argument of submersible pressure gauges on twins. The true like DIR way of doing it is only having a single SPG, because when your cylinders are manifolded behind you, you're breathing from both of them simultaneously, so you only need a single submersible pressure gauge to know how much gas is left in both of your cylinders. If in the unlikely event that something should go wrong and you need to shut down one of the valves because something's failed, your dive is over anyway, so you're heading back to the surface. You should have a rough idea of how much gas is left in your cylinder anyway. So even if you do have to shut down the left post and your SPG doesn't work anymore, it doesn't matter so much. You're ending the dive and you're heading back to the surface. That being said, personally, I dive with a SPG coming off of my left post and a wireless air transmitter coming off of my right, just because that covers all bases for me, basically. I can dive knowing that I can see all of my my pressure and breathing information on my dive computer because it's coming from my wireless air transmitter. If I lose connection or the battery fails on my transmitter, then I still have my analog SPG coming off the other side. If you replace that submersible pressure gauge with a second transmitter, then I suppose it's just that kind of extra redundancy. And if you do have to shut down one of them, you can still see how much pressure you have left with the other. So it's kind of personal preference. The main downside is going to be the additional cost and your dive computer, I guess. A lot of dive computers, you can you basically say, right, I want to see this cylinder pressure on my dive screen, or you can see them both at the same time, in which case it would just be the same number. So it's personal preference. You could do fine just diving with a single wireless air transmitter off of your left post. You can do whatever you want, basically. But the only real benefit of having a second one is just like extra redundancy. It's not essential. There's not going to be any great benefit to it. But if you want to, go for it. Personally, I just use a submersible pressure gauge just because it's cheaper, and there's never going to be any like connection errors or battery to run out. But hey, you do you. Kyle Fleming says, can you get angled fittings for the first stage hoses? I know there are loads of hydraulic fittings that work at similar pressures that come in all shapes and sizes. Is there a particular reason why these are not used? They do exist. Yeah, we got plenty of those kind of fittings and adapters. I usually look at Omni Swivel. They're always a good company for those little kind of adapters. If anyone has like a weird fitting or some kind of unusual thread on a hose, then yeah, my usual thought is, right, let me just check Omni Swivel, because they usually make all sorts of adapters, especially for like Poseidon second stages. I think they're a bit better now, but when I first started, I remember trying to get replacement hoses for Poseidon was tricky because they don't use the standard 9/16 inch thread on their second stages, so you'd have to get an adapter to fit a standard thread hose. Otherwise, you'd have to buy the Poseidon specific hose for that second stage, which is just inconvenient. I think they're better now. It's been a while since I've double checked, but that always is one of my earliest memories as working in a dive center and trying to get replacement hoses for a Poseidon. But yeah, the first end side, yeah, you can get adapters, and you might be able to get swivel joints and things. Definitely like Y adapters as well, if you need to fit 2 high pressure hoses or 2 high pressure fittings out of a single high pressure port. There's all sorts of different adapters out there. They're not that popular. Most divers just kind of get on with the hose routing that they're given with their first stages. That they're obviously designed to have sensible hose routing options straight out of the box, and we're seeing more and more of them with a lot of like Mares and the X-Deep regulator. A lot of angled ports, especially for like high pressure ports, so that they angle like diagonally downwards instead of straight out of the first stage. So a lot of the time the design is already there, and you're just adding extra failure points. Really, it's an additional O-ring, an additional thread that can fail. So most divers just kind of get on with what they're doing and whatever hose routing option they have. But yeah, if you do have something unusual and you do need an adapter, have a look around. You'll definitely find something. Omni Swivel is my usual first go-to, but I'm sure there are going to be other brands out there. It's handy to know the screw thread sizes. So the low pressure ports, they're all 3/8 inch, except for some like Mares regulators and some older first stage designs. Sometimes they have a 1/2 inch, but that's a really, really big fitting. The Mares ones, they have sometimes they have do they call it DFC, dynamic flow control or something? No, I forget what they call it. But they have like a high flow port, which is usually for your primary, and that's usually a 1/2 inch fitting, which is very unusual. It gives you, plenty of like gas volume, but you can only use specific hoses. Most others, I mean, if it's like for a BCD or a dry suit or something, then it's just going to be 3/8 inch. Then you get 7/16, which is your high pressure port. That's high pressure on both sides. Both the male and female ends of a high pressure hose are 7/16 inch, so you can effectively fit them together. And then on the end of a female, the female end of a low pressure hose is going to be 9/16 inch. That's the standard. There are going to be some unusual ones, but yeah, if you know sort of which they are and what it's going to, then yeah, you can usually find an adapter to go from one to another. Yeah, they definitely exist, but yeah, they're not that common. Felix Bestanding, Bestandig, 4358 says, what is your body routine after I dive, or after a dive? I mean, for example, eye drops, eardrops, or other disinfecting things. Maybe there's even more to take care about except eyes and ears. I'd love to see a video on the topic if there's enough to talk about. Yeah, ears, definitely. Dry out your ears. It took me a long time to realize what was actually happening, but it was usually on the air flight home after like a liveaboard trip or something. My ears would be all like funny, like when you can't equalize your ears, you get that kind of like stuffy feeling, as if you got water on the ears or something. And that's kind of what it is. Yeah, I never really used to do anything after a dive. You just get on, you feel perfectly fine. But yeah, later on, you're like, oh, my ears are feeling a little bit weird. Maybe I didn't equalize or something, but actually it's more likely swimmer's ear, or is it called otitis externa? And yeah, after a dive, just dry out your ears. There are a few ways of doing it. You can make something called ear beer, which is a mixture of vinegar and rubbing alcohol, just in like a 50-50 mix in a little dropper, and just a drop or two in each ear after a dive helps to kill any nasties in your ears and just dry out your ears as well as it evaporates. And yeah, that's definitely important. You can get other like treatments and things if you look for swimmer's ear. Not necessarily treatments, but like preventatives. So either something that you use before a dive to like coat the inside of your ears, but especially after the dive to really dry them out. I think I've seen some people recommend like a blow dryer, a hair dryer, just lightly in your ear, obviously on a low heat and not directly into your ear, but just to get that like warm airflow to dry out your external ears. Otherwise, I've never done a lot with my eyes, unless you're diving somewhere particularly nasty and water does get in your eyes. Then yeah, you do want to take care of that. But personally, I've never had that issue. Otherwise, it comes down to like your crotch and your armpits and your feet as well. You want to keep them dry and disinfected, so that you don't get any sores. It's very easy to get sores when everything's like hot and wet, and yeah, so it's important to take care of that. Otherwise, trying to think, just kind of go over your body, make sure there are no like cuts or scrapes or anything. Cuts and scrapes will scar when you're on like a diving trip because they don't heal properly. Every time you go in the water, the scab softens, and you end up with scars for something that wouldn't normally scar. But yeah, it mainly comes down to ear care. Otherwise, like hydration, obviously is very, very important. Make sure that you rehydrate. The air that we're breathing is very dry, so that our cylinders don't rust. Even though you're submerged in water, yeah, you can dehydrate very quickly, and yeah, get some food back in you, get some sugars so that your body's like back up and running, because that can affect your decompression. You want your body to be in like tip-top condition post dive so that it can fully decompress efficiently. But yeah, try to avoid the usual. I see what you mean. Most of the other things, if you search online for what to do after a dive, is what not to do. So don't go on an airplane, don't go skydiving or have a deep tissue massage, all that kind of stuff. It's like, don't do this, but what should you do? Yeah, it is basically just take it easy. Look after your ears, look after any like sweaty areas, and yeah, hydrate basically. And that's it. Another shout out to Diving into the Darkness, the cave diving documentary with Jill Heinarth. We've got the online digital screening coming up on the 9th of June through to the 15th. So you can sign up and watch it as many times as you like. And yeah, we're hoping to have a Q&A with the filmmakers and Jill Heinarth on the 15th. So stay tuned, like, share, and subscribe, do all that good social media stuff, and check out our website, scubadivermag.com. All the links are going to be down in the description below. Thank you for listening, everybody, and of course, safe diving.